Hi, everybody. This is Kathy Richardson, and I am looking forward to being with you on Thursday from 12 to 1:30. Our big topic to talk about will be the wall. And so I put together this presentation. It's about 15 minutes long, and it'll help us all have a foundation, a common foundation, so that we can base our discussion on Thursday. And so, as you're going through this presentation, if you will, think about questions, think about topics that you might want to delve a little deeper into as we talk about the wall. And even if you have time, if you want to shoot me an email, Kathy with a C at ascendingleaders.org, I can make sure that we talk about some of those questions and have a really, really good time on Thursday dealing with the wall. So let's start with the just definition of the wall. The term itself was coined by Janet Hagberg and Robert Gulick in their book, The Critical Journey. And if I kind of switch to Ascending Leaders language for a minute, in our 4 stages, we talk about the wall happening in the second stage. And it's critical to us moving from stage 2 into stage 3. Janet Hagberg and Robert Gulick define the wall as our will comes face to face with God's will. So it's a question of, will I surrender everything? That's a big deal, isn't it? You see why it's called the wall. It's a big question there. Is what's the big thing you are holding on to? What still needs to be surrendered and healed? I want to take a minute, and I'm just going to be quiet, and I'm going to put some different things on the slide so you can think through just what are the things that we as human beings tend to hold on to and at some point will need to surrender. I'm sure you can think of a lot more that we could add on to that slide, but I hope this just gets you thinking about the things that we tend to hold on to. Now, at the wall, there will be something that we all tend to hold onto, maybe tighter than other things. For me, fear was a big deal. Fear of failure, specifically. Others, it's security. Others, it maybe hurts, disappointments, maybe our dreams. And so there's usually just one really big thing that we're holding on to. Think about it this way. Think about the rich man who came to Jesus and asked him, "What must I do?" And Jesus told him, "Go and give away everything that you have." I think that Jesus is recognizing that this man is really struggling with holding on to his riches, and will he surrender everything? Because that's really what I think Jesus is telling him here. Are you willing to surrender everything, even your riches? And so you might go back and read that scripture again and see if you agree or not. But I think that may be what's going on there for that man. Okay, so we've talked about what the wall is and that whole concept of surrender. So the wall is not the same as getting stuck, although we may get stuck at the wall. I think one misconception is that we're stuck. We always get stuck at the wall, and that's not true. We may not get stuck. We may go right through that wall, or we may be moving through the wall, but and not be stuck. So it's not a have to there at the wall to get stuck. There's another verse that I think is key at the wall. You must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind. Isn't it true that in order to love God with all of our heart, we have to give God all of our hearts? In order to love Him with all of our soul, we have to give Him all of our soul. Being able to surrender it and know that God's ways and desires for us are so much better than our own ways and wills. Okay, let's switch gears a little bit and talk about how do we recognize the wall. If it's this idea of coming to a place of surrender, full surrender, well, how do we recognize it? What might it look like? Well, we will often see real personal need for healing and renewals. Things will begin to come up, maybe from the past, or usually from the past, I would probably say. And just so that the healing and renewal is a really big thing to look for. Spiritual exhaustion. We just may be exhausted, maybe physically as well. You might hear people using phrases like end of my rope. We will probably see a crisis going on in our lives. Midlife crisis, I threw that in there because I had someone actually tell me, my district superintendent for U Methodist, my midlife, that when I was at the wall, that he thought I was going through a midlife crisis. And actually said, if you were a man, I would say you were going through a midlife crisis. And, it did look a lot like that. Very, very different as well. So when we think someone's going through a midlife crisis, we may say, what's really going on here? And is this part of, it could be signs of the wall. We'll see confusion. You may see doubt. We will seek new awareness of God in our lives. And we will often do things that don't make sense to other people. This is what it may look like at the wall, things to look for, signs that that's what's going on. So what do we do at the wall? Some people will push and push and push at that wall and not be able to get it out of the way. And so they just, with everything of their own might, right, trying to push that wall. Other people will try to jump over it. Others want to fly over it. Some pull out the whole Kung Fu Panda. Some will see so many different directions and not know which way to go. And others will just stand with our questions. What is this? What's going on? Not knowing what to do. Just kind of a state of confusion. And we may just kind of get left there with our questions. So what might happen is we kind of come up against the wall, and we may recognize it, we may not. And either subconsciously or consciously, our ego, our guilt, shame, comfort, we may be questioning our value, fear, lack of direction, will cause us to step back from the wall. And then we may come up to the wall again in life, and we may again step back. And some of the things that keep us from going through the wall might be, just getting stuck in our head and or in high achievement. And we may come up against it again. And other things may keep us. Doctrine, ordination, secret addictions will often come out there. Sometimes, let's talk a little bit about doctrine and ordination. Doctrine, our kind of our belief system, sometimes we'll hold on to a certain belief that maybe isn't quite God's wanting to work on, or it could be one of those things we're working on and we're not ready to let go, or we just may become very doctrinaire. And that, talking about ordination, and maybe I should just put leadership in general there, but when you're up front as a leader of spiritual things and spiritual life, it's really hard to say I'm at the wall. I'm struggling with surrendering something, and completely surrendering to God, and there may be a lack of safe space to do that. And so we may just step back from it altogether. At some point, we'll come up to that wall and we'll either decide to go through it, and it may look really squiggly and messy. It won't be a direct, straight line and smooth all the time. Or we may choose to just say, I'm not going to deal with the wall, or I'm not going to deal with whatever it is that I'm facing. And that is when we get stuck. So there's a very little moment, and that moment of decision, and when we decide to go to the wall, go through the wall, we are drawn to surrender, and we become less fearful because we know that God's leading. We come to that place of really knowing that, and knowing that it will be worthwhile to walk through, and take that faith step to go through the wall. Healthy behaviors at the wall: listen to God, to others, to our experiences. Really important to listen. Embrace pain. That's very countercultural, isn't it? Learn what that pain has to teach us. Face unresolved grief, anger, bitterness, martyrdom, hurt, fear. Accept the invitation to heal. Set aside solitude and reflection time. Really important to take that time to do the work at the wall. You also want to enlist the help of spiritual friends, guides, and counselors. Seek clarity of purpose and calling. Draw on your courage. Take responsibility for yourself, your choices, your actions. Be gracious, and it might be tempting to blame others for how we got here, but to be gracious to others. Surrender your will. That's the big deal. So all of us are in positions where we have opportunities to help others, to help teach them about the wall, what it is, help them recognize it, how we really help others through the wall. A couple of things really helpful. Questions. Asking questions is key. Here's some really good ones to ask. What is standing in the way of God living God's life through you? What are you holding on to? What would you have to give up to move forward into more intimacy with God? How are you experiencing God? And if someone struggles with that question, another way to get at it is to ask about their image of God, because then you can pick out some of the ways that they're experiencing God from that in that discussion. So it's helpful as well. Be sure to validate and even celebrate the wall. That may seem a little bit odd, but the church really needs to do this. We need to validate it, know that it's real, know that we all go through it, that it's an important part of spiritual growth, and even celebrate that it is such a key time to grow in our intimacy with Christ, and celebrate when we go through the wall and begin to experience a deeper intimacy with Christ. We also want to recognize frustration as an acute moment for growth. We want to hold sacred space for questioning and discernment, and we want to be a safe spiritual friend and confidant. You also don't want to expect them to be very active at church. They may back off. Their activity may only be in areas of spiritual direction, mentoring, or healing. And their activity may only be intermittent, and be okay with that. We don't want them to get lost. We certainly want to keep an eye on them, but don't have that expectation that they will be full out serving some of those things. They need the space to work through and go through the wall. Be sure to recognize and embrace some of these things: discomfort, surrender, healing, awareness, forgiveness, love and acceptance, closeness to God, discernment, melting and molding, solitude and reflection. We want to really be able to recognize and embrace as well tension of the feelings that go on and the things we experience going through the wall. You also want to paint a picture of the other side of the wall. So, what is that? How do we picture? How do we paint a picture of what's on the other side of the wall? Well, the good news here is that it really is greener on the other side. And some of those things that happen on the other side are healing of our soul, clarity. We really can begin to get clarity of purpose, calling, more detailed about that, how we are to live our lives, how we are to be with others, how we are to be in our work, our heart's desire. Said recovery of ourselves. We might even feel like we really found ourselves after we've been through the wall. Integration of our spiritual selves, a new image of God, and really understanding that God loves me. Our past will become history. Freedom, great freedom in getting through the wall. Emotional health, more meaning in life. We become more compassionate, humble, loving, aware of others' pain, and we experience a real intimacy with God. So it sounds pretty good, doesn't it? It is a very freeing thing. It is energizing, and definitely one of those times in life where it truly is greener on the other side. And isn't God good in that? Thanks for taking time to go through this presentation. I look forward to being with you on Thursday at noon. And if you have any questions that you want to make sure we cover, if you want to jot me an email, go ahead, or just bring your questions and we will talk and go deeper in this and work together on getting even better at helping people grow in their faith, especially around this area of the wall. So have a great time between now and our time together on Thursday. I'll see you then. Bye.